Welcome to the ADHD Women's Wellbeing podcast. I'm Kate Moore-Youssef and I'm a wellbeing and lifestyle coach, EFT practitioner, mum to 4 kids and passionate about helping more women to understand and accept their amazing ADHD brains. After speaking to many women just like me and probably you, I know there is a need for more health and lifestyle support for women newly diagnosed with ADHD. In these conversations, you'll learn from insightful guests, hear new findings and discover powerful perspectives and lifestyle tools to enable you to live your most fulfilled, calm and purposeful life wherever you are on your ADHD journey. Here's today's episode. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the ADHD Women's Wellbeing podcast. We are having another curated compilation episode where I'm bringing you some of my favourite guests, some of my most interesting conversations and trying to bring them together with an energy that feels pertinent for each episode. And today I have got Kat Brown and Rachel Gow. Now, I'll start with Kat. Kat Brown is a freelance journalist and a commentator whose work on ADHD, mental health stigma, and other social and art commentary has appeared in lots of national titles such as Grazia, The Telegraph, The Times. And she has a fantastic book that she brought out this year called It's Not a Bloody Trend, A Guide to Living with ADHD in Adulthood. Now, I really highly recommend this book, and I really wanted to share this conversation that I had with Kat because I think it's a powerful conversation to have if you are newly diagnosed or you are looking for further support or validation or an understanding of how your ADHD has shown up, which may look very different to other people's ADHD.
As certainly I find through listening to your podcast, to all of the ADHD podcasts and other, neurological conditions, other mental health podcasts, we try and listen to the similarities and not the differences in people's stories. And it's kind of amazing how in people who on paper we have nothing in common with, we can take so much comfort and reassurance from people sharing their stories.
How do you feel knowing that you've put this book out into the world and you've given all these people a voice and allowed other people to see themselves in this sort of collective group of people and know that actually we're not broken, flawed, bad people?
On the one hand, I feel completely delighted and also really put out because pretty much everybody that I've interviewed in the book is much funnier than I am. And there are some amazing zingers in there, which make me very, very happy.
I underlined a few of them.
Yeah. But on the other hand, when I think sit down like with my tarot cards or something else or with the traitors of an afternoon, I've got about 12 global series to work my way through now, I feel really angry. I feel really, really angry because we shouldn't have to do this. In 2024, people should be able to access healthcare at all, let alone without a waiting list. People should be able to either go to a doctor and know that they will be listened to thoughtfully and realistically and not dismissed out of hand by somebody who isn't perhaps an expert themselves. People shouldn't have to turn to TikTok or books or podcasts, all the things that we do whilst we're waiting for an assessment to find out more about how our brains work, to learn at a relatively late stage in life that we are not defective, horrible avatars in meat suits. Like, people should not have to find out through their children being diagnosed with a condition that they also have that condition. And the idea that then there are still some people who are disingenuous enough to go, oh, well, they're just chasing medication. Oh, sorry, that medication that people are going to have to be on a waiting list for 2 more years to access, the medication that is largely not available in the UK at the moment, instead of, going on WhatsApp and texting the neighbourhood drug dealer to do a drop-off. It's just, it
and the
blows my
medication,
mind.
It's so convoluted and not certain. If it was just one pill and it was simple and it wasn't going to be this kind of like 3-month grind of trying this thing, failing with that thing, upping it, changing it, mixing it, balancing it, it's frankly exhausting having to go through that titration period. And so if someone was doing it for the medication, it's just ridiculous. And a lot of the time we go through this whole process and realise that actually Do we like the medication? I'm not sure. It's not for that. And it's very important that people understand that it's not a quick fix, this medication. You also talk about access to work and how to really stay on top of that, because it is not an easy system.
Nightmare.
And it's almost just doing it to spite them, isn't it? I mean, sometimes I do drive them mad because I think they are ignoring me again. And I just drive them mad because I deserve to get this access to work help. And so many other people deserve it as well.
There's also a really interesting phrase that I think it's important for us to keep in mind, particularly if/when we see sloppy coverage of ADHD, or to be honest, any other community or minority being treated in this way. And that's future shock. And that is when the idea of the future and present they just all come up a little bit too fast. And it's basically where we are now with the internet, with 24-hour news cycles, with trends, with Twitter storms, with all of that. It's that feeling of things catching up too fast. And that is when people can become particularly donkey-like, stubborn, and just like, well, this is all nonsense. We didn't have it in my day. And it's like, no, you didn't, Stephen, because back then, if people had a problem and they weren't in an acceptable group, if you like for example, a white middle class or upper class gentleman who, you could put away any sort of strange behaviour by calling him eccentric or something like a nice honourable word like that.
Yes.
It's just,
So
things
true.
have changed.
Yeah.
And I think this might be real, Pollyanna thinking, but for me, something that really helps, whether it is around ADHD or there not being the one pill to fix everything. And again, if we do medication, then coaching and therapy should always be part of that golden triangle, fingers crossed, although good luck to us accessing it. But it is that whatever we do now, our experiences now, the research that we take part in, the literature that we put out there, the stories that we share on social media, the family that we speak to, the children that we are raising, all of this is going ahead to help people down the line in generations to come understand themselves better. And that is an absolutely amazing thing. It may not be like the comfort above all comforts, but particularly for people with ADHD, and to be very generalising about it, we love a sense of purpose. We love a mission. What an incredible mission to be a part of.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, that's what gets me up in the morning. That's what keeps me going when I'm exhausted and burnt out, because I've got 3 daughters and a son, and all 4 of them are neurodivergent, 3 are diagnosed. And as much as they don't want to hear from me because I'm their mum, and all I do is talk about ADHD and gently put books on the stairs and their pillows and send them podcast links, which get ignored. And I try and say, yeah, I'm an expert in this. And they say,
I'm a cool mom.
I do not care. All you do is talk about ADHD and then shut me down. And it's very frustrating. But I hope that one day this work that I'm trying to do in this world will help them or help their children or their friends and the next generation. We just plow on and we just do what we need to do. And like you say, if we're lucky enough to be driven by purpose, if we're lucky enough to have found something that motivates us and gives us fulfillment. And we know that Dr. Ned Halliwell talks about this a lot. And I know you mentioned him in the book, that he's a big proponent of really honing in on what fulfills us, what drives us, what keeps us going every day, what we feel passionate about. And then whether that's a big mission or just getting up in the morning and sweeping your leaves and keeping your garden tidy, or going to your local church, or doing whatever that is, as long as that's there, then you will have an easier life with ADHD. I wanted to introduce Rachel Gow as well. Now, Rachel has got a fantastic book, also something that I recommend highly to lots of clients in my community, called Smart Foods for ADHD and Brain Health, something I'm very passionate about. And Dr. Gow is a registered nutritionist, and she's published 22 peer-reviewed book chapters in scientific papers. And she is also a specialist in neuroscience, epigenetics. What I would say is how to describe Dr. Rachel Gow, PhD, is she is a nutritional neuroscientist, a neuropsychologist, and a neurodevelopmental specialist with expertise in various mental health conditions and associative learning and behaviour differences. So Rachel really is the most incredible expert. Our full conversation on the podcast was absolutely fascinating. And what really is something that I am really honing in on so much now on the podcast, you may have noticed, is I guess sort of the neurology side of ADHD and really understanding the neuroscience and how our brain is wired and what we can do to help ourselves and the gut-brain connection and really boosting what we have. We've got a wiring and we want to be able to know how we can make the best out of this, how we can really look after ourselves and thrive with our lifestyles and understand the right foods and the way to live. So our neuropsychological makeup can feel right to us. And for many of us, it's not felt right. We've always known there's something different. So let's hear from Dr. Rachel Gow. There's always a way. We've always got choice, and we've always got a way to step into our power, even if it feels like we're totally powerless. And then you find out that your child's got a learning difference, which I can assume, back then wasn't called a learning difference. And you were then having to like navigate this whole world on your own as a single parent and learn about ADHD, which is only just the stigma is only just being removed slightly. I mean, it's still there. So I can only imagine what it must have been like for you to have to then advocate for your son and advocate for what he needs. And can you tell me a little bit about how then you became, a dietitian, a neuropsychiatrist, and why, diet and nutrition and everything has become like your whole career now?
Yeah. I just want to say first and foremost, I salute every single mom raising a child with a neurodevelopmental difference. It is not easy at all. I don't think people understand the challenges. I mean, luckily I was young because I had lots of energy, and that was important. I was able to juggle a lot, and I did. I had to become a bit of a helicopter mom. But it was extremely challenging, and the lack of professionals, the lack of support from teachers, just constant calls, being bombarded, pick your son up, come to this meeting, let's discuss this. It just went on and on and on to the point where I had to completely give up my job in real estate. And everything happens for a reason, everything happens for a reason. And, the realization that being this successful young working mom was never going to work. And that's when I decided to attend university part-time. And I was very lucky because if you're 21 or over, I don't know if it's still the same nowadays, but you could get in on merit. So I got in just because I'd actually decided to study psychology during the evening and do an AS level in psychology as a hobby. Just as a hobby. I was really interested in psychology. I was like, I'm going to do this class, up the road from me. And, so I had that. And then I had kind of what they call life experience. So upon interview, I managed to gain entry, and they didn't even make me do a 1-year access course, which was sometimes the case. They make you do a 1-year access course before you go to uni. So I was extremely blessed that I was granted entry as a mature student, and I decided to study. And that led to, as I said, 14 years of study, and it just kind of snowballed. That was never the plan. I just wanted to find out as a mom how I could, best understand these neurodevelopmental differences, what they meant, what was going on in the brain. And I began to learn that the brain is a biological organ, and that basically what you ate had a huge impact on how your brain functioned at a molecular and cellular level. And that was just fascinating. And I'd noticed at home with my son that changing his diet and going back to basics completely, getting back in the kitchen and making everything from scratch, eliminating processed foods, had the biggest difference beyond methylphenidate, which had given him terrible side effects. And we'd really battled with that one because actually a school presented me of the dilemma that you either medicate your son or we will politely ask you to withdraw him, because that's what private schools love to do. So I was kind of forced to medicate him, which I didn't want to do, but I did. And unfortunately, it just didn't work out for him. I know the brain imaging studies show that it can normalize brain function in the same way as non-diagnosed children, so children without ADHD, they can actually kind of normalize brain function. And there are lots of positives with ADHD medications for some people.
Yeah.
But we have to address the fact that at least a proportion of individuals are non-responders, or the side effects are so severe. It's estimated that it's around 1/3 that this happens to. The side effects are so severe that it warrants discontinuation. And also, because of my nutritional psychiatry, neuroscience training, I know that nutrients can act pharmacologically, so they can act like a drug in the brain, obviously over a much longer period of time. They don't give those instant, effect sizes. And of course, an effect size for anyone listening is just a kind of a standard for how effective an intervention is. It's a statistical quotient, if you like. So I just want to make that clear. So when you test a nutritional medicinal product, it has an effect size, so you know how effective it is actually in reducing clinical symptoms, whether it's depression or ADHD.
So the gut-brain axis, we hear this a lot, that this is really pivotal with ADHD and nutrition and our mood regulation and cognition, that if we start, like you say, removing more of the processed food, eating cleaner foods, eating the right type of balanced protein and omega-3s, really making sure that we are kind of honing in on nutrition. And are you noticing a big difference when, say, a family comes to you or a parent comes to you and you put them on a different diet protocol?
Okay, so let's go kind of right back. I help parents in a diverse way. So I have Nutritious Minds Consulting, which is a clinic which effectively sends people to a clinic in W1 where they have a blood draw. And then I look at their personalized nutrient profile to assess for specific insufficiencies in key nutrients which regulate neurotransmitter function. So, which may help contribute to the regulation of serotonin, GABA, dopamine, norepinephrine, and so on and so on. So first and foremost, I do that. And then simultaneously, I will take a stool sample to look at their gut health and what's going on there, because obviously the gut-brain axis is critical. It's a new and emerging field, and we're still learning more and more. But there are research pockets all over the world now that are giving us a very good indication of the influences of our gut microbiota. And I'll also look at food intolerances and food allergies, which is really, really important, because basically what's happening is that children are eating the very foods that they are intolerant to, promoting the growth of what we call dysbiotic or pathogenic bacteria in the gut, which are then over-colonizing and are impacting the production of specific neurotransmitters, which are made in the gut, and then some of which are transported into the brain. So that's really critical. And in fact, what I found over the years of collecting data in this area is that almost 100% of the families that I work with, their children present with a wide range of nutritional insufficiencies in key nutrients like iron, iodine, magnesium, selenium, omega-3 fatty acids, and so on, plus food intolerances, plus food allergies, as well as dysbiotic bacteria in their stool samples. So that's really important collectively, because when we do that type of data collection, we have a personalized profile in terms of nutrition, what's going on. So, and then the great thing is we can make changes. So we can improve the nutritional insufficiencies by making specific dietary recommendations. You need to eat more of this food group, or you need to, adjust that, or you need to restrict your intake of ultra-processed foods. That's really, really important, because a lot of people don't really understand much about the impacts of ultra-processed foods. And in fact, I have been working with a research team made up with several researchers, mainly from America. Some of you may have heard of Dr. Robert Lustig, who wrote Metabolical. He also wrote The Hacking of the American Mind. But we've been working on a project for about 3 years now, which has been published, and it's called the Metabolic Matrix: Re-engineering Ultra-Processed Foods to Feed the Gut, Protect the Liver, and Support the Brain. And you can download that for free on Frontiers in nutrition. But ultra-processed foods ultimately consist of non-nutritive compounds, synthetic food additives, many of which are not regulated, like flavorings, colorings, preservatives, synthetic emulsifiers. They often contain trans fats, refined carbohydrates, processed meats, excess sugar, sweetened beverages. All of these are ultra-processed foods, which are, heavily industrially produced formulations and notoriously poor food sources of the types of foods that we need for brain health and brain function. And we know, because it's been systematic reviews in terms of outcomes and effects, that they impact the body and the brain. They increase risk for the premature development of metabolic health diseases, type 2 diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, stroke, and so on and so forth. But they also impact the brain in terms of the function and activity of the brain. And I think we have to be careful because ADHD, individuals of ADHD specifically, I have found within my professional research that they're chasing the dopamine highs.
Yeah, exactly.
And it often starts when they're 8 or 9 with sugar addiction. Because they get that dopamine release and the activation of reward circuitry in the brain, the ventral striatum, nucleus accumbens, those areas, those regions are activated in the same way they are in adults taking, cannabis, cocaine, marijuana, nicotine, alcohol. And they're rewarded, if you like, for eating those junk and processed foods. And that starts the binge, withdraw, repeat cycle of addiction that can increase. And then teenage years, they're experimenting, with cannabis. And then some people with ADHD will self-medicate their entire life, as a way of kind of normalizing their brain's biochemistry. We're wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. But unfortunately, although some of those substances, like nicotine, for example, in clinical trials, has been shown to enhance memory, has been shown to increase attention, but it's everything else that's, that comes with the nicotine that is highly dangerous. And obviously nicotine is a very addictive substance. It's very difficult to withdraw from that, like heroin. But, individuals with ADHD have increased risks when it comes to addiction because of that dopamine release. And anything that can release dopamine, whether it's, social media, gaming, junk and processed food, sex, can be addictive. And that's the path that you have to be careful of. It's almost like if you have ADHD, just be so mindful as to what you're putting in your body. And I think there's an element also of kind of like self-love and self-care there, as well. And I think a lot of people with ADHD, like my son, have suffered from low self-esteem throughout their lives. And that can lead also to harmful outcomes because you just feel shit about yourself. And then you're going to do things that are going to make you feel even shittier. And that's the sad thing about it, and I think working on yourself, we're all works in progress. And there's so much we need to do to keep ourselves away from harms and also kind of optimizing well-being.
I really hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did and it resonated with you, I would absolutely love it if you could share on your platforms or maybe leave a review and a rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please do check out my website, ADHDwomenswellbeing.co.uk, for lots of free resources and paid for workshops. I'm uploading new things all the time and I would absolutely love to see you there. Take care and see you for the next episode.